morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome everyone to the IFA's Global Café. My name is Katrina Brazanis, Director of Policy and Advocacy here at the IFA. So we are living in an era of demographic transformation, and for the first time in history, there are more people over 60 than there are under 5. And yet the needs and preferences of older adults are often overlooked, particularly when it comes to ensuring that they can continue to access nutritious meals, but also the experience of enjoying those meals. So at its core, nourishment is not just about food, but it also includes care, respect, and connection, and recognizing that the act of eating also touches on memory and social identity and relationships. And so joining us today to discuss this topic and her work is Miss Queenie Man. So Queenie is the founder and CEO of the Project Futurists, managing director at Forward Living. And Queenie is also an appointed member of the Elderly Commission of the Government of Hong Kong, a board member of AIDS Concern and the Hong Kong Social Entrepreneurship Forum. Combining her insights and experiences in both branding and elderly services, Queenie established the Project Futurists in 2019 to transform the way people perceive aging through advocacy, education, community service, and impact program design. And Queenie established Captain Soft Meal to raise awareness on dysphagia health through 70 plus sessions of soft meal workshops and chef's training and sensory restaurant on wheels, which we're going to speak a little bit more about today. So Queenie is an advocate for human-centric elderly care and is responsible for the rebranding of culture homes and the development of a Nordic-inspired senior community Forward Living. So thank you, Queenie, so much for joining us today.
Hi, Katrina. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Queenie, based in Hong Kong. A big hello to everyone from all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining us today, Queenie. So we always like to start with hearing a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about what led you to your work today. So can you tell us about yourself and your journey?
Yes. So I started actually my first career was in brand consulting, and it happened about after graduation, I was able to join the consulting industry, really focused on brand development, brand strategy. And about 8 years ago, I had the opportunity of joining my high school classmates' family business that focuses on elderly care. Basically, they were running a number of rehabilitation shops that delivers and sells what we call rehabilitation products, anything from electric wheelchair, electric nursing beds to nutritional care products, adult continence products. They also run a series of elderly homes in Hong Kong and have been around for 20 years. So my journey started when we had our first conversation about she invited me and said, "Hey, Queenie, can you take a look at my logo?" Because as a brand consultant, my instinct was, well, it's not just a logo change. If you want to really create change, then we also need to look into the broader spectrum of who our customers are today, what are their needs, how do we speak to them in a relevant way. So from a conversation, it turned into my second career, which is really focused on really integrating my knowledge in branding together with the elder care industry. So that's how I started. And as I was spending time at the elderly home, and also, visiting all of these different kinds of community events, I realized a lot of older adults, they were suffering from dysphagia, and the choices of food that was available to them was very limited. And as you might all can imagine, that the food available is usually pureed food. And in Hong Kong, we usually blend all kinds of different ingredients together. So you can almost imagine the color of orange blend with green vegetables, blend with the rice, the congee, the soup, and then it turns into this very not good looking cement-like kind of paste or pureed food. So, but back then there were actually food science from Japan that allows food to be remolded into soft texture that is easier and safer to swallow. And that is why I started, really doing a lot of work investigating in more, alternative methods of making texture modified soft meal. And that's how I also started my alter ego, my hero character called Captain Soft Meal, where you can imagine I'll be wearing a silver hair wig with green leggings and a white t-shirt that has an S on my chest. It means soft meal. And with that, I started my social entrepreneurial journey. I also set up my studio, The Project Futurist, that focuses on promoting the future of aging through education, advocacy, and also community service. And I'll talk a bit more about, how my work also transcended into not just focusing on food, but also into community engagement programs. And also these days, we have been quite busy, keeping ourselves busy, especially with training restaurants, commercial restaurants, on how to create inclusive dining menus. So food that complies with, the International Dysphagic Standardization Standard, IDDSI, to help people living in the community to be able to enjoy easy to chew and easy to swallow diets.
Thank you so much, Queenie, for that overview. And I want to definitely get into all of the details of all of these programming that you're doing. But first, I'm wondering if we can take a step back. So you mentioned dysphagia, and you mentioned, some of the challenges that many people may suffer with swallowing. So can you just explain a little bit what is dysphagia, and who might experience dysphagia, and what is sort of the burden that it might have on people being able to eat or nourish themselves?
So I myself, my background, I'm not a healthcare professional. So I studied business when I was in college. So when I first learned about dysphagia, I also had to learn from scratch. Dysphagia means swallowing difficulty. And there are many different causes of dysphagia. So someone who might be going through the aging process, or someone who might be experiencing diseases such as a stroke, Parkinson's, dementia, and even individuals who might be born with mental challenges or physical disabilities. And these days, we also are being approached by a lot of patients with head neck cancer. These are individuals all who are all impacted by swallowing difficulties. In fact, it's so common. Let me first talk about, the conditions in Hong Kong, or the situation in Hong Kong. I think a few years ago in 2015, the Hong Kong University Swallowing Research Lab, they were conducting a research, and they realized that for those who live at the elderly home, or what we call long-term residential care home, almost 60% of them suffer from different levels of dysphagia. And for those who are living in the community, about 41% of individuals are being impacted by, chewing difficulties and swallowing difficulties. And if we step back and look at the broader number, in fact, a majority of our population, especially older population, over 90% of our population here in Hong Kong, among older adults, they suffer from what we call a lot of chewing difficulty or oral health issues too. So we are looking at a much bigger issue that might be affecting not just the way you enjoy the food, but also how it affects the intake on nutrition, and also it affects like what Katrina was saying earlier. Food is not just for nourishment, but it is also about social connection. It's also about mental well-being. So it affects a broader spectrum of issues.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Queenie, for sharing that, recognizing that you're not necessarily a medical expert, but thank you. That was an amazing overview, I think, to set the scene for the work that you do. So I'm wondering now if we can fully hear about Captain Soft Meal, and how this supports people with dysphagia, and what sort of gaps does this program fill for older adults, but also their families, their communities.
Mm. So when we first started Captain Soft Meal in 2018, my sole intention was really to raise awareness on dysphagia health. And I remember back then, we were able to take part in some of the public exhibition and showcase in the industry. So that every year in Hong Kong, there's this Tech and Innovation Fair that happens. And I remember back then we were part of the food pavilion, and back then there were only four stalls, four booths. But this year, just last year in 2024, there were over 20 stalls in that food pavilion area. It shows you the immense growth and development of care food or dysphagic diet, especially in Hong Kong, this part of the world. So when we first started Captain Soft Meal, the sole intention was really to make information about swallowing health easier to understand. And that is why I created the mascot character. You guys can search online. You can find myself in my uniform. And we started originally with cartoon. We started with, drawing all these cartoons to talk about what is swallowing health, why is it so important, how can we advocate for more dignity dining. So that's how we started. And then later we expanded into doing YouTube videos. We also started creating recipes for caregivers to download online. They can follow our videos and recreate these kind of soft meal recipes. We also started hosting workshops, over 700 workshops, not just for caregivers, but also for healthcare professionals in the industry, like speech therapists, occupational therapists, nurses, and more importantly, our heroes who are actually creating the food. So we also organize these kind of workshops for chefs and kitchen staff. And even we also started expanding into the public. So meaning students from secondary, primary school, we use food as a medium to talk about old age as well. So we started doing all this work, really filling the service gap back then when there wasn't really a lot of workshops happening. And I think through this platform, we were also able to connect with a lot of caregivers who were, caring for the family members. And we hear so many stories about caregivers spending hours of time making soup. In Cantonese or Hong Kong culture, we love making soup, and they would be spending hours to create all these, chicken essence or soup so that their family members can enjoy them. However, they were also faced with, a lot of disappointment when the food that they create might not have the right consistency or texture. So that is why we spent our earlier days really focused on education by hosting these kind of workshops and providing an educational channel to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Queenie. And I wonder maybe if you can share what has been sort of some of the response from people that have been part of the program or used some of the resources, if you can share at all, what sort of impact it has had.
I think all over the years, we have met so many caregivers, so many patients who are actually suffering from dysphagia, especially younger patients who were going through head neck cancer. And I think a lot of the stories that we hear really is, there was an individual, a gentleman who came to one of my classes years ago, and I remember we were learning how to make Cantonese barbecued pork rice soft meal. And in the middle of the class, he raised his hand and he asked me, "Hey, Queenie, you're not doing enough." He shouted out, and I was really shocked because back then we thought we were doing quite a lot already. We were hosting a lot of workshops. We were doing quite a lot of like we shared a lot of our work through the media. We also participate in a lot of these public exhibitions to meet with people, to exchange ideas. And his comment was, when I took the barbecue pork rice or the soft meal that he made to the hospital for his dying mother, the doctor rejected the food that the gentleman made solely because they were not able to understand what soft meal was about. And they were fearful that this kind of food texture might increase the risk of choking. So eventually, he wasn't able to feed his dying mother. And that is why he got really frustrated. And when I heard about this and his story, it really made me think about, the work that we do would never be enough. because not only do we need to educate the public, but more importantly, is that we need to also bring this knowledge to the industry, especially the healthcare industry, where we are practicing this knowledge every day. So whether it's in the hospital context, where older adults they receive treatment and speech therapy services, but also to be able to bridge that knowledge gap for individuals who are now working at the elderly home, and to really empower them with the knowledge that okay, there is actually alternative diet dysphagic solution available today to help individuals with swallowing difficulty to eat with dignity, to eat with choices. I'm not saying that everyone who is on a pureed diet or anyone who is having dysphagia, it's suitable to eat soft meal. We're just saying that if you ever need it, there is solution available. And today in Hong Kong, there's so many alternative options with the government really providing a subsidy on soft meal for individuals who have swallowing difficulties. And these subsidies are available at elderly homes that are subsidized by the government. And even if you do not live at the residential care home, or you are not qualified to get these subsidies, you can still purchase these care food in rehabilitation shops. In these days, a number of food chain restaurants, fast food restaurants in Hong Kong, they provide different ranges of texture too. So imagine, a regular dish could be served in different softness, different, textured, available today. So we're glad that care food has been made more accessible today in our community. And it took us some time, but definitely there were so many of these anecdotes or stories that we hear from patients. There were, staff from elderly homes that were telling us that, hey, the food that you just delivered, so we do a lot of catering service too for the elderly home. And I remember there was a nurse who called us and say, hey, the granny who were on the soft meal diet, when she saw the soft meal chicken thigh, the drumstick, she was so excited. She thought it was a real drumstick. So she reached out with her hand and tried to grab it, but it was just too soft because it was more like a gelatin texture. So we are very happy to hear these kind of stories every day, and we hope to continue to inspire more people, more organizations to be able to provide, a full range of different diets so that individuals can choose from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing, Queenie. It's amazing to hear some of the impact that that this work is having. And I want to also speak a little bit about some of the next steps that have come from this work. But there's just a few questions in the chat that I think we should tackle first. So firstly, there's a question from Catherine that's related to this that just asks if you've gotten any kind of government approval for the recipes to help gain support for this work.
So when I first started Captain Soft Meal, it wasn't funded. It was not a funded initiative. I started the campaign myself with my team of just three. And we started, drawing cartoons, really promoting the concept of dysphagia, health, and started creating these recipes. This technique of making soft meal actually came from Japan. It originated from Japan. Japan has been, quite a pioneer in care food for many years. And to create these kind of soft meal, it's rather simple. We use original food ingredient that's already cooked, and we blend it. As we blend, like how you normally make puree, we add what we call a soft meal gelatin enzyme. That is plant-based. With a very small amount, you're able then to turn these pureed food into molded food that has this gelatin soft taste, very soft, like mousse-like texture. And because we use the original ingredients, so it retains all of the original flavors. And when we create the shape, we use molds, so silicone molds. Let's say it's a chicken thigh or drumstick, we debone it, we'll blend it, and then we remold it in a drumstick mold. If it's a fish fillet, we'll do the same, and so on. If it's Cantonese dim sum, as everybody might know, we are very fond of having dim sum. all the shrimp dumpling and pork dumplings, then we're able to also have molds these days being 3D printed and made with food grade silicone to remold it. I don't know if we could also share some slides just to give everybody some context on the food that I'm mentioning.
Yeah, yeah,
Great.
sure, please do.
Yes, I'm sure everybody. Okay, so as you can see from my screen right here, um, as you can see, so these are some of the Chinese festive delicacies. These are normally made with a lot of what we call glutinous rice. So it might be very sticky. It might increases risk of choking hazards. And for most of the time in elderly homes in Hong Kong, these are taboo food that usually does not exist at the elderly home, especially for those with dysphagia. So that's why as we add the enzyme and blend the original food, it reduces the stickiness of the food itself, and you can remold it into any shape you want. So as you can see on the screen here, again, you see some prawns, you see some sweet and sour pork, very local Cantonese dishes, and also steamed fish. So these are all traditional comfort food that we serve here in Hong Kong. And not sure if any one of you have tried the char siu rice, barbecue pork rice. So it has sort of a savory flavor and a touch of sweetness to it. But imagine most of the time, older adults with dysphagia, they would be eating something like this. So on the right hand side, it's quite unappetizing. And it's difficult for individuals, for example, with dementia, to understand or comprehend what they're actually eating. So that is why we spend a lot of time in, really recreating and molding these food, or even, let's say, these kind of dim sum, Cantonese dim sum. I'm sure you might have seen them before. These are all very soft gelatin texture. It has the same original flavors. So yeah, and of course, just to touch on the part about approval, we always work with a speech therapist when we design these kind of recipes. We need to understand, what is the right kind of texture or softness the individual might need. So that is why we collaborate with speech therapists. We work with nurses from elderly homes just to understand, which individuals are suited to eat these kind of soft meal. Of course, I'm going to go into my second part of my sharing later as I show you the dishes that are created by together with restaurants.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Queenie,
Yeah.
for sharing that. And I think it's wonderful to see the photos and how much it really does mirror the food that is not the soft meal. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to ask just one more question from the chat from Shmuel, who is asking about food insecurity or food security of older people. So I'm wondering if your work intersects at all with food security, and if so, what sort of action needs to be taken, whether that's from government or from work like that to support food security as well?
I think when it comes to food security, the work that we are involved in, we can share from the perspective of, the government's involvement. So before I joined the industry, I think for the longest time, food wasn't really a priority in, the day-to-day operation. Of course, it's important. It's something that older adults, they look forward to every day. And they do not just look forward to, but they anticipate with excitement. I think it's true for everybody here as well. But it also creates a lot of disappointment for individuals who are suffering from dysphagia, because most of the food options available even today, as someone with dysphagia, it's blended pureed diet. And the food budget, again, I don't speak on behalf of the government, but the food budget has always remained unchanged over the years. And that is why I think to be able to create alternative food option has been quite challenging from an operator's perspective. So that is why I think after all these years of advocacy and just education, we were very lucky that in 2020, the Hong Kong government, they released this subsidy for subsidized elderly homes in Hong Kong, which is about 30% of the elderly homes here in Hong Kong. They would be eligible to receive this funding that is specifically for individuals with dysphagia to be able to purchase or create soft meal for their residents who are, suffering from swallowing difficulties. It has never been done before, a specific subsidy just for soft meal. And then later on in 2020, there was a separate subsidy that was available for not just older adults, but individuals with disabilities. So this is a recurrent funding that it exists in Hong Kong today, where the government would also always make adjustment as well every year as they provide these kind of subsidy. So this in fact helped to accelerate the development of care food and making care food accessible in different parts of Hong Kong. So today, we're not the only company that is actually producing soft meal, but you also have, high-end supermarkets who are retailing these kind of products. You also have online e-commerce platforms that are making these food accessible to everybody. You have restaurants who are making a range of IDDSI compliant or what we call, easy to chew and easy to swallow dishes. So now that these kind of care food, we call them, it's more accessible. We hope that we're able to address, food security in that sense. And we hope that, this could be accessible to everyone who needs them, not just older adults, but patients as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Queenie. So I want to also allow it for some time to talk about some of the other programs that you have surrounding this. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about some other initiatives that have arisen from Captain Soft Meal, such as inclusive dining and your sensory restaurant on wheels. So I'm hoping you can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I think when we started Captain Soft Meal, we were able to create a community on our own, where, caregivers and patients, they started sharing their recipes too. It was really nice. Like some of the caregivers, after they attended our classes, they started creating their own version of soft meal using their own home cooking. And it was really nice. But we asked ourselves, what would be one way of making this more mainstream? And enabling more people to understand, the importance of swallowing friendly or, just soft meal, alternative options that promotes dignity dining. So that is when we started thinking about programs to introduce into elderly homes that delivers the food that we make, so that more older adults with dysphagia, not just the ones who are living in the subsidized elderly homes, but also those individuals who are not benefiting, who are not able to benefit from the subsidy today, they still can experience soft meal. So that is why we started this program called Sensory Restaurant on Wheels. We started the program in 2020. The intention was really, back then in Hong Kong, we had a very long period of social isolation. And I think everywhere around the world, we all experienced the same, where there was major outbreaks of COVID in elderly homes. And so back then in Hong Kong, we had this policy where, family members can't really go visit them. They have to meet each other, pretty much across the window through the glass partition. And a lot of older adults, they can't also venture out into the community. So we asked ourselves, what is the one thing that our elderly, they love the most? And it has to be dim sum. So we call them yum cha meaning going to the tea house. So we decided, okay, if they can't come out, let's bring the tea house to them. But we want to make it more theatrical and more dramatic. So we started creating all these props and backdrops. We also had scripts written for the program. And so we started this initiative by recreating the nostalgic Cantonese restaurant at the elderly home. We usually go inside 1 hour prior to the event starts to dress up the entire dining hall. Then we'll have music, we'll cook aroma so that they can smell the aroma of the dim sum. And then we have volunteers come in. Back then, when there was still COVID, it would be just me and my team. But now we have corporate volunteers who come in as well, and they will be dressed in different costumes. So imagine the waitress in the qipao and the long Chinese dress. You also imagine you will have chef and waiters and restaurant managers. So we have all these different characters that have different things that they need to do and say in job descriptions as well. And we tailor this program specifically for individuals with swallowing difficulties and also dementia. And we realized that with this kind of sensory, immersive kind of engagement, it really brought back a lot of old memories for our older adults. And you see them, in Hong Kong's tradition, when someone poured hot tea for you, you usually tap your fingers on the table to say it means thank you. And when the program starts, not only do all these muscle memories come back, you can tell that they were lit up. And during the singing, dancing session, older adults who are very frail on geriatric chairs or wheelchairs, they will be tapping their feet, they'll be, clapping their hands, remembering all these lyrics from 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so it was a very nice program that we have done, and we have delivered over almost 150 sessions today, servicing more than 4,000 individuals with dementia and dysphagia in Hong Kong. And we go into all kinds of elderly homes, subsidized, non-subsidized, elderly centers. We even do it for, individuals who are living in rehabilitation facilities, for people who are with disabilities. So we started doing that, and this year we started branching out our effort also to homes where individuals with physical or mental challenges they live, because they also have swallowing difficulties, and that is why we started changing from dim sum. We do birthday parties now. So and these are just some of the community engagement programs that we have done. But of course, I think since last year, we also had we made a pivot in terms of the work that we do, because we realized that no matter how many sessions of these kind of restaurant on wheels that we have done, people always want more. We have a long waiting list of over hundreds of elderly homes on our waiting list. But we said, in order to really accelerate making care food available in the community, we should be working with restaurants. So we started training restaurants on how to make soft meal. And because last year, during this time, we conducted a survey, and we realized that a lot of caregivers, in fact, they wanted to take their family out for meals, but they realized that a lot of these restaurants are not chewing or swallowing friendly. I'll give you an example. I don't know if it's the same in the rest of the world, but we noticed a lot of caregivers would then be bringing scissors to dining tables, similar to how you would, cut food into smaller pieces for toddlers. So you notice that caregivers carrying all these different utensils to restaurants. They even will be bringing in their own wireless USB food blender to blend the food at the restaurant. So imagine ordering something and then they would just blend it right away on the table. It might be weird in the Western context, but in Hong Kong, restaurants, we just do whatever we can in order to provide for our family. And you also notice that there aren't a lot of food options available on restaurant menus. They would take more than 15 or 20 minutes to just look at the menu to see what is available. Usually in the Cantonese or Chinese context, it's either steamed tofu or steamed egg or congee. And these are very limited meal options. So that is why we started training restaurants. And I also wanted to show everybody some of the visuals too. So this is a very famous restaurant here in Hong Kong. It's called Yongge. So it's famous for its roasted goose, and it's been around for almost 80 years in Hong Kong. And I remember when I met with the owner, a third generation owner, Yvonne, last year, we had this conversation. We said, what are some of the challenges that restaurants face these days? And she said that a lot of customers are no longer returning. And even if customers return, they realize, they can't really eat a lot of the food on the menu. The staff, the frontline staff, the waiters, they noticed that, older adults, they were starting to really spit a lot of food because they can't chew properly. And they can only suck on the juices of the food of the dishes. And that is why we decided, why not create a menu that is inclusive for everybody? So the entire family can all share a meal together. So that's how we started by training training their head chefs, doing frontline trainings on the IDDSI standards, and then whoopsie, I'm gonna show you again here. So I don't know if everybody had their breakfast or dinner yet in your part of the world, but I'm looking at this and I'm already hungry. So as you can see, there are different IDDSI leveled foods that we also work with our speech therapists to make the assessment to make sure they comply with the different softness and textures. So on the left-hand side, we have the roasted goose. The skin is real. The whole thing is real. But once you lift off the skin, you see the soft meal. So we just blend all the goose together and remold it into the thigh shape, the drumstick shape. And then on the bottom is actually siu mai, so the pork dumpling, the dim sum. And on the right-hand side, you have your regular food that is chopped to the right texture. You have steamed patty that complies with the minced and moist texture. So all of these food are in fact very family friendly as well. So imagine you don't need to really have dysphagia in order to eat it. So we try to really destigmatize, dysphagia itself. And in our recent project, we also started training another restaurant chain in Hong Kong. And we started creating these food that looks just like your normal food. So the first one, it's the braised pomelo skin. So imagine pomelo, but braised skin that's super soft and easy to swallow. You also have the baked tofu. You also have deep fried pumpkin with salted egg yolk. You have all these yummy delicacies. But you also have, very, very normal food like fried lobster with egg white. These texture are all what we call a minced and moist texture. Individuals with chewing difficulties can also enjoy. And then it's all about soft meal. So that food used to be puree. Now we are able to remold it. Anything from abalone to pork dumpling, shrimp dumpling, or barbecue Chinese pork could all be turned into easy to swallow soft meal. So these are just some of the dishes that we have been doing, and we will be continuing to train restaurants so that we want more family members to enjoy dining out and sharing the same meal together.
Mhm. Thank you, Queenie, for sharing those. And I know that there's lots of people in the chat saying how hungry they are after seeing those photos. So thank you, and myself included. So I wonder as well what kind of, I mean, you did share a little bit of the response from restaurants when you've gone in and you've had the conversation about, they're also seeing, some of their clientele or some of their patrons kind of not returning or not being able to eat some of the food. So I'm wondering what has been the response when you've had these conversations with different restaurants, and also if you can share, if they've shared with you anything about how people have been enjoying these foods in the restaurants.
We were very happy because we launched our first inclusive dining restaurant last November. And we worked very closely. We actually were working with the restaurant for over a period of 6 months to do the training and do the promotion. And in fact, the restaurant owner and their staff they were very proud of the work because they are feeling that they're helping a new segment of customers to be able to dine in together with their family members. And they also noticed that there were increased in new customer and also revisiting old customers who are returning back to the restaurant. And this time, family members do not just order this roasted goose for themselves, but they also order the soft meal version for their family member who are suffering from dysphagia. So they are increasingly seeing, this as something we could, really invite the broader family to share a meal together. And it's really nice to hear these kind of anecdotes. And even let's say, Father's Day, it's going to be this weekend, and we wanted to make sure, we are doing enough so that people are aware of these new dining options so that they can take their family out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I wonder too, I mean, you've talked about kind of the importance of also the experience of dining and the experience of dining, especially with friends and family and loved ones. So I'm wondering if you can share at all, what the impact of that experience has been, not just the food beyond being able to taste the food, but also being in the restaurant or as you mentioned with your kind of sensory restaurant on wheels, the visuals, the traditions, the smells, all of that. I'm wondering if you can share how important that impact is as well.
Mm. We always talk about, eating itself, it's a multi-sensory experience. So anything from the environment, the ambience, uh, how the food is being presented, the original flavors, whether it was able to retain all of these original flavors, the interaction between the residents during our sensory restaurant on wheels. I think these are all important elements to consider. I'm currently doing my studies at the University of Stirling in dementia, and I've been for the last 3 years as I was doing my degree. My focus is really studying the effects of sensory or what we call sensory dining. And I think for all these sessions that we have delivered of sensory restaurant on wheels at the elderly home, we saw, every time when we go into a home, we would witness older adults, they transform over the period of 2 hours from someone who might be very quiet and reserved. Once you hear the music, once the food is being delivered in front of them with our dim sum card, we have all these audio effect where we would have our bells, our chimes at different time during the rundown. We try to recreate that noisy and very um, uh, um, what we call it, colorful environment so that the individual can feel like they are being transported to a Chinese restaurant. And I think once the individuals they uh, immerse themselves into the experience, you'll see their senses awakening. They will be more responsive. A lot of the care staff would be telling me that normally they don't eat, but today they finish all of their dim sum. They even said recently there were this elderly home staff. She said, I had no idea Granny Chan um knew how to use chopsticks. But because of the dim sum was so real, like the individual was picking up their chopsticks and starting to really, pick up the food itself. So we hear a lot of these kind of stories during our program, and we believe that, creating that kind of ambience and sensory experience for individuals with dementia or dysphagia, it's important as, the nutrition of the food itself or having the right texture. They are all important factors into contributing a good dining experience that is meaningful and engaging.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there are just two questions in the chat, one from Eileen and one from Valerie, that I want to voice. So Eileen is asking if sort of the foods in Hong Kong might be a little bit more easily made into soft foods than perhaps some kind of Western, she's mentioning kind of Ireland, UK foods. And then there's also a question about if there are any other initiatives that you're aware of outside of Hong Kong or maybe in other parts of the world that might be prioritizing soft meal.
Mm. Maybe can I answer the second part of the question because it's
Yes.
just on top
Sure.
of my head. So I think outside of Hong Kong, in fact, it's one of um I would say, most advanced city in terms of care food development. Just because I think in the last few years we spent quite a lot of resources as an industry a whole overall to promote, dysphagia health. And because of the subsidy and the increased awareness, there are different techniques of making soft meal today. You have ready to eat, you have frozen, you have restaurant delivering it, and then you also have new supply chain that pretty much were developed just for the soft meal category. So we have this whole new spectrum, and the good thing is that it is not just subsidy on the food that is available today. More importantly is that we also have subsidy or resources on speech therapy service for elderly homes. I think this is also equally important where you have intervention by healthcare professionals who are able to make assessment and to make the judgment on, the kind of diet the person needs. So we have also, new subsidy coming from uh, technology. So in Hong Kong, again, the last few years, the government has injected quite a lot of resources. We're talking about uh, a billion Hong Kong dollars that focuses on introducing geron technology, so welfare tech in other parts of the world. So with this kind of subsidy, all homes are able to buy equipment that makes soft meal. So any equipment such as blenders that have heating function or thermal carts that allow, temperature control for the food that you want to deliver. So there are all these kind of new technology, resources on technology. We have speech therapy services and also subsidy on care food. It really created this new ecosystem and even economy on its own. And I think that is important. So outside of Hong Kong, other places like Japan, they are also very advanced. They have been doing care food for years, for over the last 2 decades. You also have fast food chain also providing easy to chew and easy to swallow food. You also have you can buy off the shelf, ready to go kind of packet pureed food. They even have dispensing machine that dispenses green tea that are already pre-thickened. So there are all these technology in Japan as well. And also parts of the world such as Singapore. I don't know if anyone here is from Singapore, but Singapore also has a policy since 2019 that it's called the Eat Safe policy. And the sole purpose of the Eat Safe policy is to improve swallowing safety among older adults and patients at the hospitals and the elderly homes. And I think this is also equally important because with the government support, with policies like this, it accelerates the development of this topic, especially in providing the right suitable texture and equipping and empowering staff with the right knowledge and making these kind of assessments. So I think these few places are doing quite well. I know there are also a lot of food manufacturing companies in, let's say, parts of Australia that also has these kind of food options too. And
Mhm.
going back to the first question, which was, sorry, I might have missed it.
Um,
Whether
it-
it's more applicable to Asian food.
yes, yeah, exactly.
Yes. I think this technique of using the soft Mugellan enzyme to transform food, it's applicable to food from all parts of the world. It's simply just blending your regular food and then remolding it. But this only creates a texture that is what we call a soft meal texture. So it complies with the IDDSI level 4 texture, but in fact, I would say to be safe, I would say it falls between level 4 and level 5. So it's between a minced diet and a pureed diet. Um, of course, if you want to create other textures like level 6, level 5, level 7, you can simply change the texture by changing the cooking method. So steaming the food before you fry it, or you just need to adjust the size of the food, how it's being prepared, the cut size of the food. So, for instance, level 6 require the individual to prepare the food so that it's less than 1.5 cm times 1.5 cm, if you're familiar with the standard. So it's just simply the idea of adjusting the cut size or making the food softer through different kinds of cooking method. Even like let's say some parts of the world we use yogurt to marinate a lot of food, like let's say Indian cuisine. So using these kind of different agents of tenderizing food can also help to achieve the right kind of texture.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much, Queenie, for explaining a little bit more about also the process of creating the food as well. So we are kind of almost to the end of our hour here, but I want to ask you, what do you foresee as some of the next steps for your program and for this work, and in what ways are you continuing to expand and bring this to more people?
Mm, I think for us, we're very glad that we're able to work with different or collaborate with different people and have amazing partners. We do have a program that is funded by a foundation. Actually, two programs are funded by a foundation. And for instance, our inclusive dining program, we were able to be supported by the DBS Foundation, and it really helps us to bring our vision forward by collaborating with restaurants. And in order to work with restaurants, especially with today's economic situation in this part of the world, I think it's so important that in order to help a restaurant to be successful in inclusive dining, you need to provide the right kind of equipment for them. You need to provide them with the knowledge on dysphagia health, and to help them assess whether food is suitable and compliant with the IDDSI standard. You also need some sort of marketing resources to help the restaurant promote it, because essentially it is a for-profit business. So that is why we're just lucky enough that we have that kind of support to enable us to move forward and to bring this concept of, inclusive dining to the rest of the community. But I think for us, we have a few things happening already in the pipeline. We are hoping that we can optimize our current production process by really thinking about adoption of technology so that we can lower the cost of production so that more people can benefit from soft meal. This is something that we are currently working on. Second is we're also collaborating with more F&B partners, not just restaurants, but also food that is normally in the regular texture, but we also want to make it accessible to people with dysphagia. So let's say in Hong Kong, there's something very famous. It's called the egg waffle. So it's like waffle, but it's in the texture of little bubbles, and it's more like a street snack. And we want to also make these kind of food accessible. So we started collaborating with them and say, hey, why not we'll use your own, egg waffle, and we make them into a soft meal version so that more people in elderly homes or in the community can benefit from it. Yeah, I think these are a few things that's actually happening right now. Of course, looking forward to the next 1 to 3 years, I hope that our work can really reach more people. We started working with some elderly homes and hospitals outside of Hong Kong, actually in Singapore last year. And we also started doing restaurant on wheels in Singapore too, because of our very similar culture. So we hope to continue our work and spreading this knowledge on dysphagia health and dignity dining to more people. And maybe perhaps one day, I have a tiny dream, and my dream is as Captain Soft Meal. I hope that one day, if I go into any restaurants, as I open the menu, it's not just kids menu, it's not vegan or keto alone, but we also have chewing and swallowing friendly meals and dishes so that everybody can share a meal, enjoy that kind of connection, enjoy the food together. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Queenie. That's an amazing aim, and there's a lot of support in the chat, and lots of people applauding the great work that you're doing as well. And even some people saying that they would like to attend a virtual workshop if that ever is something that you're interested in doing. So,
Yes, would love to.
yes. So I'm just going to take a moment here to introduce our next week's session for the Global Cafe, and then Queenie, I'll come back to you for just any final key takeaway messages. So next week on the Global Cafe, we hope you all will be joining us. We will have Miss Chuan Wong, who is one of our IFA Board of Directors, and she'll be talking about emerging aging trends in the Asia region. So certainly maybe a little bit of a building off from our conversation today. And so we look forward to hopefully you all joining us for next week's session. So Queenie, I'll hand the floor back over to you for just any final takeaway messages from our conversation today.
Yes, so thank you everyone. Been reading all of the messages and thank you for being so supportive. Yes, I'll be in Cape Town. I'll be part of a panel discussion on the topic of just food. Food is everything that we do. We use food to connect. Yeah, so I'll be part of the panel in the food security, nutrition, and economics session. And I look forward to meeting everyone in Cape Town or virtual. And if you're interested in connecting, I'm also available on LinkedIn. You can send me a message, and I would love to be able to work with different cuisines and maybe explore different kinds of science that helps to create options that are, food options that are accessible to people with different dietary needs. And thank you, everybody. And in Hong Kong, in Chinese culture, we wish everyone good health.
Thank you so much, Queenie, for sharing all of the amazing work that you're doing. And hopefully people have the chance to connect with you either in Cape Town or virtually. We are so looking forward to your session at our conference as well. And thank you so much for sharing all of these amazing foods and all of the amazing programs that you're doing. So we're wishing everyone a really great weekend. And thank you everyone for attending another session of our Global Cafe, as well as to the IFA team, particularly Luana, who helps to put on our Global Cafe every single week. So wishing you all a great weekend and thank you so much.